All right, we're live. So, special guest, first time on this channel. Needing no introduction, but I'll give him anyway. Chris Andre here. You can find him at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing related tweets, or you can listen to him plug his channel. Chris.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on. It's genuinely an honor to be here. I do appreciate it. In terms of my YouTube channel, it's just Chris Andre Boxing. Not that creative, to be honest with you. It used to just be Chris Andre, and then I started doing more about boxing. So I just had to add boxing on the end. Otherwise, I would have been a lot more creative with it.
No, it's a great channel. You do a lot of breakdowns, a lot of analysis. One of the probably most detailed. You talk about things that I don't even think about when I'm looking at a fighter, like all the little things. And I have to say, a recommendation of a video was your Alexander Usyk video that you recently did about his mindset and how to get under his skin. That, to me, was one of the best. I listened to that in the airport, getting ready to fly home, and I was just like, jaw was dropped listening to it. It was crazy.
Well, I'm glad I managed to keep you entertained on the flight or in the airport before the flight. But yeah, I mean, I started off with doing quite a lot of technical breakdowns. And I still think that's mainly the bread and butter of it. But to be honest with you, I do try to look for different angles that maybe other people haven't thought of. I'm quite interested in the human psyche and psychology, and I think it's a massive part of the fight game. And yeah, just try to look at the sport from maybe different angles, maybe something that someone else hasn't thought of, or I'm not try to pose those questions out there and get people's views and opinions on it. I'm always looking to learn from others as well, So obviously, I'm a massive fan of your channel too, and the way everybody, when you're doing your lives and everybody's jumping in and giving their own opinions as well. It's a wonderful thing to be able to bounce each other the ideas off of each other, So that's what it's about. It enriches our boxing experience, I think.
It does, and I feel like I'm like, even though like my channel's bigger, yours is nearly at 3K. Hopefully, because your channel, I left the link in the description if anyone wants to go over and subscribe. Like that Chris Andre Boxing. I feel that like I've had to have my boxing knowledge kind of times 10 for this, because like I feel like I'm in boxing royalty because of how much you know and how much in depth you can have.
Oh no! Listen, you're very clued up when it comes to the sport of boxing. I'm not. I don't think of it like that. I just try to share what I see, and hopefully it resonates with people, But yeah, I'm glad to know that you enjoy it, though, Gman.
100%, man.
Flattering. Thank you.
Always like when I get the notification, Chris on the video, yeah, there we go. Wherever I am, like I'll have a listen to that. But we want to talk boxing. We want to talk about kind of the fights that have been and the fights that are coming up. I guess we got to start it out with the fight that happened on the weekend, Wilder Fury 3. My opinion, that was the most fun out of the trilogy to watch. Out of the best, that was probably the best. What were your thoughts on it? And you watched it live. What were your thoughts actually watching that fight as it was happening, as it was playing out?
So I personally thought that Wilder did alter his game plan a little bit. He tried to invest to the body early on. I felt like he was going too hard to the body. Those straight right hands to the body, especially down the center line, you're not targeting the liver or anything like that. I understand it's going to keep Fury off, but it wouldn't have been enough to cause considerable damage. What it did do is stop Fury from coming in recklessly. It had to make him think about how to come in. And I understand that, but he was putting so much into it. I remember thinking to myself, is this going to take something out of the tank down the stretch? One thing I noticed about Fury, which from a tactical perspective, I did not like at all, in the second fight, and to an extent in the first fight as well, obviously in the first fight, he's moving backwards. In the second, he was coming forward a lot more. The method of entry was a lot more, I don't want to use the word tentative, but he wasn't just walking in recklessly. He was essentially trying to throw off Wilder's timing with a whole series of feints when he was just on the edge of range. Sometimes they'd be hard feints, sometimes softer feints with his feet, with his hands. And what that was doing, it was Wilder obviously likes to have that hand cocked back at the chest area. And as you step in, he wants to time you on the way in. Or if he's going to lead off, he always wants to touch you with that left hand first. If he's moving backwards, he won't even throw anything on that jab. It's a rangefinder. So he just wants to make sure that you're in line with that right hand. And that was throwing off his timing. In the third fight, though, Fury bypassed that. And he started to have a high guard and walk into range, which was very, very dangerous. And he ate a number. Yeah. And I mean, you saw it from Dominic Brazil. You saw it with Stiverne. Guys that try that, it doesn't work out well for them. He got away with it overall, but he did get dropped and he did get hurt. And there were too many moments where it was telegraphed. No, it was telegraphed from Mumbai to Poughkeepsie. You knew what was coming, and he would still just walk straight in. So from a tactical perspective, I thought Fury actually got it wrong. And also the sharpness. Was he lacking that little bit of sharpness in terms of the movement and the defense because he put on too much weight? Was it the layoff? Was it the fact that he started to almost disrespect Wilder's abilities after the first two fights? He thought to himself, I came in out of shape the first time. I should have won. The second time I battered him. And so he didn't prepare mentally. That fear factor wasn't there. And so the adrenaline wasn't there. And his reaction times weren't as sharp. I mean, yeah, so it was a fantastic overall fight. But I don't think Fury was at his best. That's what I mean. You know, he deserved to win. He was a dominant fighter.
Definitely.
But it was just a case of it wasn't vintage Fury. I mean, I don't know how you saw it.
I agree with you. I think that Fury came in not in good shape. Even though he wasn't much heavier than the first fight, he didn't look as good in terms of just aesthetically. He looked fleshy. I think that a lighter Deontay Wilder, that would have been interesting. Because when I was watching that fight live, I was looking at Wilder loading up on those body shots, telegraphing everything he was doing. And I was just thinking, mate, you've put on excess weight. You're a lot heavier than you normally are. Your body's not used to that. If you start swinging and wailing now, you're going to be if Fury can get through these few rounds, you're going to be knackered. And I saw him after even 3 rounds, even before he got dropped, his work rate just kind of went boom, and it just kind of stagnated the rest of the fight. After the 4th round, there wasn't much left of Wilder, and I think that Fury was probably cautious about getting hit, as well as Wilder showing tremendous heart. But for me, both guys, Wilder was improved and Fury kind of regressed. That's kind of how I see it. He was better Wilder in the second fight, and Fury was worse.
I think I'm in the minority here for sure, but I'm one of the few people that actually thinks that Wilder might have benefited from the extra weight. I thought that in the clinches, he was holding Fury off a lot better. You saw the forearm go across the face of Fury on a couple of occasions, which gave him some space to work. And after the 4th round, I agree with you. He was having his energy sapped as the fight went on. But he did hurt Fury on another couple of occasions towards the end of rounds. One of them, I think, was with an uppercut, another one was with a right hook, and they were on the inside. And without that added weight, I'm not so sure he would have been able to do what he did on the inside against Fury. So while I definitely agree he was putting way too much effort into the first couple of rounds, I'm not necessarily in the camp that thinks that putting on the weight cost him. In some regards, I think it helped him. There is a trade-off, of course, with stamina. But I don't think that was what cost him the fight. I think ultimately there was a difference in ability between the two fighters. It's just as simple as that. And Wilder did close the gap significantly compared to the second fight. But like you, I agree that although Wilder improved, I also feel that Fury regressed massively, quite significantly. And I think
it was noticeable. It was just he didn't look like the same fighter at all, I thought.
No, but listen, in terms of adaptability, adjustments, heart. This is what makes Fury a special fighter. When he cannot outbox you, he can do that. And that, this is a guy that can box inside, outside, orthodox southpaw. He can make it technical. He can go to war. If you do drop him, he's got great recovery speed, great recovery rate. So you're talking about a very special heavyweight as far as I'm concerned. And, that ability to adapt, even on an off day against one of the most dangerous punchers in history, it shows you what Tyson Fury is capable of doing.
It was funny because when you say powers recovery, that's one thing that's we kind of think of with Tyson Fury now. Because when Wilder dropped him in the 4th round, and it would look a decent enough knockdown, immediately I was like, he's not stopping him. Like, not this round anyway, because I know Fury has such good powers of recovery. I was like, even though for most fighters getting dropped by Deontay Wilder, you think how long? I was like, he'll get through that. I just had to, he'll get through that. Fury just seems to be able to take it. Yeah, he gets hurt, he goes down, but he's just instantly kind of, I'm good to go now.
He definitely looked lucid when he was down on both occasions. The only thing I'll say, it was the power of Deontay Wilder really is incredible because there wasn't much cock on the first knockdown. It came from the shoulder, which is rare for Wilder because he usually throws it from the chest, right? But it landed on the forehead. If that
the
lands
hardest
on
part
his
of the head.
chin, he's right. If that lands on the chin, Fury might have serious problems. You know, I mean, his recovery rate is brilliant, but let's not forget in the first fight, he was a quarter of a second, half a second away from not getting up in time. So, you know, a human being is still a human being, you know. One of the things Fury was doing really well in the second fight, which he was not doing in the third fight, because he was fully aware of the trajectory of Wilder's typical right hand coming from the chest and almost like a slight loop on it. What he was doing, something that Vladimir Klitschko used to do, whereby he would be just on the edge of range. And when he would see Wilder make that move, often behind the jab, because very rarely, if ever, does Wilder lead with a power right hand. So the jab in itself, when that foot steps forward, is often a tell for the right hand. So the minute that would happen, Fury would step back with his arms up. And by stepping back, he's maximizing that range, but also by bringing that arm up, he's cutting off the trajectory. I'll just move around this way a little bit. He's cutting off the trajectory to the chin. So as he's stepping aside, that shot that wants to come directly to the chin, he's already got that arm blocking it. There's a barrier to cut off the trajectory. Kind of like if you're driving down a motorway and there's a highway and there's a tree on the road. That's almost what it was like. He bypassed that in the third fight. He wasn't doing that. Rather than bringing those arms up and stepping backwards, he was ducking his chin down to his chest to protect that chin, high guard stepping in. Now, if you're going to do that consistently, because Wilder's punching power is long, and when it's delivered, it ends on the point of the full extension of the shot. If you essentially bring your head in before he's extended, you can stunt the power before it's been released. Yeah. But you can't do that consistently. To do that, you have to be perfect against a guy like Deontay Wilder, because if there's one split second, we're dealing in hundredths of a second here, one split second where you haven't come in close enough, quickly enough, you're going to eat the full force of that. And you saw with the knockdown, it wasn't even a full extension, and it landed on the forehead. So he was playing with fire, Fury. So for me, he got it tactically wrong. But the Gypsy King, as he calls himself, did rise up. You have to give him a lot of credit for that.
No, I do. I thought it was just a fantastic fight. I guess the question is, where do both guys go from here? Like Tyson Fury will more, if Dillian Whyte gets through Otto, who we'll talk about now in a sec, it's likely that's going to be next. What do you think is going to happen with Deontay Wilder? We've heard Malik Scott say no, he's definitely going to come back. What do you think the best course of action for him moving forward is?
Well, the thing is, he's been officially suspended today for 6 months, which is not a punishment. It's a suspension in the sense of the word of protection. Rather than the tip, I think it's 45 days, I think is the typical or something like that, where it's is it 45 days?
It can vary between 28 to 45.
Right. Okay. Well, this is 6 months, which means obviously he's going to need that and more, in my humble opinion.
And more, man. That's a long rest he needs.
Think about it. If you consider the type of injury we're talking about here, or the type of, not injury, but the type of trauma the body goes through, it's quite similar to a car accident. If you're talking about not breaking bones, he's been through a car crash. And so he's going to need, it sounds bad, but it's true.
Basically.
You're talking about hematomas. You're talking about a broken hand. You're talking about concussion. You're talking about, definitely. Sorry?
I was going to definitely concussion.
Definitely concussion. You're talking about whiplash type injuries. He's been through the wars. He's going to need time to recover. Now, for me, I'd want to see him take a whole year out before seeing him back in the ring, to be honest. But one thing I'll say is this, right? I kind of feel sorry for him because, I know he said a whole bunch of outlandish and outrageous stuff, but he showed a real warrior spirit that night. And still, a lot of people question his abilities. And one of the things I worry about is if this has affected him long term, because unfortunately, this does take, it can take years off of a fighter's life. And it can affect you in terms of things like punch resistance and stuff like that. If he's been seriously affected and he comes back, they're going to put him in with a guy who's probably durable but can't offer much in return. I can imagine him being in there with a guy like Marius Vac on the return. Robert Helenius maybe, but Robert Helenius is heavy-handed, so that will be a risk. They'll probably bring him in with someone like Vac. If that happens and he looks sensational, no one destroys Marius Vac, right? Deontay Wilder comes along, cleans him out. Everybody's going to think this is Deontay Wilder's back. He's been working on things. He's better than ever. Then he goes in with another killer. He goes in with a guy who can bang. If that punch resistance is gone, well, you could end up seeing him lose quite violently. And then everyone will say, oh, you see, Wilder was exposed. When in reality, it's just the residue of what occurred in these last 2 fights, which is going to be seriously traumatic on his body. So, I hope he makes a full recovery. And if he is going to choose to carry on fighting, I hope, we see the true Deontay Wilder rather than a shadow of himself.
I hope so as well. Like, whilst Deontay Wilder said it before, he says things that I don't agree with and things that can rub people up the wrong way. I love watching him. Like, I've watched him since, 10 years nearly now, and I've never wanted to miss one of his fights. I've always been like, when's Wilder fighting? I'll watch it, because he's just given me so many good nights and good memories.
Yeah, and listen, I'll be honest with you as well. Hatman always loves to say how dumb Deontay Wilder is.
Yeah.
And when that is the case, unfortunately, you can be easy to manipulate. So sometimes somebody who might not have a bad heart might come across that way because they're around people that will steer them down a particular path. There have been a lot of people that have met him, that have spoken to me, people that have commented on my channel, people that have, I've just had conversations with, and they always say he was such a happy-go-lucky, very friendly guy to people of all races. I know, he's been involved in some sort of controversies when it comes to things like that, but people of all races, all backgrounds. And it's just of late, he's made some outlandish excuses. Maybe some of his fans have said some things that are very distasteful. It doesn't necessarily mean he's that bad guy. So I don't wish him any ill. I want him to come back, be healthy. And like you're saying, what an asset for the sport in terms of just watching this guy fight. You can't blink.
You can't.
So, so you want him to be back and you want him to be performing at the highest level. I mean, imagine Dillian Whyte tomorrow against, not tomorrow, say a year from now. Imagine Dillian Whyte against Deontay Wilder. Imagine.
Sign me up.
You see what I mean? You could say that about anyone. Hergovich, great fighter. How would he cope? We saw that famous sparring session between the two. That looked like a war. Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce's impenetrable chin. How does that work against Deontay Wilder? You see what I mean? So he's an asset to the sport, and I hope he comes back and we see him back at his best.
I do always wonder about Wilder, because I remember him on the come up, and he was that blue collar fighter. I remember people didn't really like him at the start, which I found crazy. And I always wonder, if he'd stayed with Golden Boy and Oscar De La Hoya, how would we be talking about Wilder today? Would he have kind of gone down that road that he went down over the last few years? If he'd stayed with De La Hoya and De La Hoya had been looking after his career, I wonder how it would be now.
Oh, so are you saying? Oh, so do you think it's the promotional team that maybe have taken him down this sort of road rather than people around him?
I think you see it with fighters who are with PBC. Like, it's a consistent team. Like, you hear about the Charlos. Remember last year and this year, you've heard a few stories about them getting into trouble. You see it with Tank Davis, Adrian Broner, guys like that. It's always something with those guys. And I just think that because Al Heyman was in the music business, and the way his fighters are, it's very diva-ish. You ever see that, like, with some of the guys he has? I kind of wonder if Wilder's in around it. Like, look at Spence is a good example. Look how Spence was prior to beating Kell Brook. You would never have thought Spence would go down the road of car crashes, drunk at press conferences, people saying, I'm his baby mama and stuff like that. That just didn't seem like Errol Spence. He seemed like a blue-collar fighter from Texas just wanting to fight.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the case might be, listen, it could also be a method of marketing, trying to capture a specific fan base, a specific type of person, and they want to create a team, so to speak. And it's interesting, actually, because I'm not going to mention his name, but there's someone out there that everybody knows and talks about, a massive Deontay Wilder fan. And he came out post-fight, and he was basically saying how, Deontay Wilder is not all the LDBC is about. So they do see it like very much like a team, and that they have to back the team, I guess. So yeah, maybe it is that. Maybe it does stem from the promotional team. Whatever the case might be, I still think that Deontay Wilder is a guy who maybe has created a persona for whatever reason, whether it's marketing, whether he's been led down a path of negativity by people around him. But in terms of his heart, from what people say, he seems like a nice guy away from the ring. Obviously, his motives for getting into the sport with his daughter were honourable. Yeah. So, I wish him the best, man. I don't wish any ill will to any fighter, to be honest with you.
No,
we all want to see them have a career, make money if possible, provide for themselves and their families. And listen, even if you're a Tyson Fury fan and you can't stand Deontay Wilder, you can enjoy the victory without wanting the effects of that to continue to last, moving forward. So hopefully we see him back to his best.
No, I echo that statement. And thinking about a future opponent for Tyson Fury brings me on to my next topic. Dillian Whyte, Otto Wallin at the end of the month. Now, I don't know about you, but I was pleasantly surprised when this fight was announced, because I kind of got it into my head we would see Dillian Whyte in a reasonably softer touch than what he's been doing before. I don't see Otto Wallin as a soft touch. I see him as a very tricky banana skin.
I think Otto Wallin's a very good boxer.
Very good.
Very good. I think he's a southpaw, very awkward to deal with. He can lead or fight off the back foot. He's quite active with the lead hand to keep you guessing. That backhand he'll bring into play to the body and to the head. He'll come off of the shoulder to get away. When you try to corner him, he'll throw a power shot to exit. He's got quite a narrow stance and uses it well to move around the ring. So he's a good boxer. He's a good fighter. I've been watching him for a number of years. But I still think that mentally, in the mind of Dillian Whyte, not just Dillian Whyte, but generally in the boxing community in the UK, I guess you could say, he's not highly rated. Because when Anthony Joshua was trash talking Tyson Fury, and he was asked, this was prior to the first Wilder fight, and he was asked about Fury as an opponent, and he was saying, listen, I'm out here, look at how deep my CV is. I'm fighting all the best guys possible, except for Wilder and Fury, because they don't want to make the fight. But look who I'm fighting, and look who he's fighting. Otto Wallin. He said it like that, as though, who's this guy? Now, obviously, AJ fought Wallin twice in the amateurs too and beat him on both occasions. So if AJ and the general community around, guys like Dillian Whyte, the general community in London, say, or the UK in general, the boxing community I'm talking about here, don't rate him. Dillian Whyte, obviously, that speech where he was saying, listen, I want an easier touch now after the Povetkin fight. If he's entering this fight thinking this guy's a walkover, I think he's going to be a little bit shocked. I wouldn't be surprised to see Wallin build up a lead with his boxing skill 100%. And his movement. But when there are two things that make me lean towards Dillian Whyte, and I will reserve the right to change my prediction later on because I do want to do some film study. But Wallin against Brazil slowed down. And if you go and watch round 9, round 10, you'll see that he was holding his feet a lot more. And even Dominic Brazil was getting close. And he was landing up close. He was finding a home for the uppercut and a home for the left hook. If Dillian Whyte is going to be targeting the body and he's able to get inside and start doing things like that later on, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to stop Wallin, even though Wallin is clearly a very durable fighter. Having said that, I can't think off the top of my head of the last time Dillian Whyte fought a southpaw. And
I don't think
he may never have. I mean, I can't think of one. So based on that, there are going to be certain angles we're not going to be sure about, because I see Dillian Whyte, although he's very good at some things, I see him more as a fighter than a boxer. So if Wallin is able to keep this into a boxing match, he could have some problems, serious problems, with a gap that he'll have to close. But there is one more thing. When he fought Fury, Wallin, and he caused the cut on the eye, Wallin was moving forward a lot more. He was fighting off the back foot against Brazil, on the front foot against Fury. Fury then adjusted and decided that he was going to go on the inside because he was scared they were going to cut it on the stop it on the cut, and he had to show more urgency. As he did come inside and he came in low, he was finding a home for the hooks. And Whyte is obviously shorter than Fury, so if he comes low, the angles will be more in his favor. As Wallin tries to exit off of the shoulder, which he likes to do, if Whyte can have a wide left hook, which we know is his best shot, to stop that exit, and he can then stay in the pocket and start ripping the body and throwing hooks to the head, I can envisage a way which will start to cause serious damage. So I think Wallin will build up a lead. I think Whyte will come on strong. I think he'll do enough to get it done. If he doesn't, I can envisage a way in which he loses the fight on points. I think it's a competitive fight. So I hope Whyte is prepared mentally for a difficult fight, rather than seeing it as, okay, this is just like a gimme after some hard fights.
I think you will. Before I give my 2 cents, I just want to thank Punch Purple Boxing on screen there for the super chat. We both know Jay, both been on his channel. 2 of the best in YouTube boxing. Keep it up, fellas. Thank you for the super chat, mate. Appreciate that every time. You had both of us on the show before. Great kid.
Great.
Now,
He really is. He's got a really good channel as well.
Yeah, Punch Perfect Boxing is a great channel. Me and Chris have both been on it. I think that, like, my thoughts on this fight, right? I fully expect after the first four, maybe even four rounds or so, 3 or 4 rounds, for Otto Wallin to be ahead. Maybe not on the official scorecard, but for all of us to be looking at it and saying he's winning this fight. Because I think he just has very good boxing ability.
Gman's gone. I'm left on the stream alone. I've overtaken the stream. So what should we talk about? So I'm going to try and keep you guys entertained. There you go. He's back. I was going to keep you entertained. I was going to sing a little song, Gman. I was going to sing a song.
That was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen because it happened last time with Ade, where it was kind of like, you can't see it, but I can, where it's like, it's flicking. And I done that at the start of the stream, and I was like, I hope to God that doesn't. And then it stopped. So I was thinking, okay, we're good. I started again. I was like, that's going to kick me out. Wait and you see. That is going to kick me out of that stream straight away. But good thing is, when I done it last time, after it kicked me out and got me back in, it didn't do it again. So I think we're all good. And it's actually clearer now. It actually is sounding a little bit clearer now. So maybe that was what we needed all along. Our backstage problems, maybe they were on. Maybe it was all my fault. Maybe it wasn't even your fault.
I'll blame you. I'm always going to blame
you. No, but in all, like, my thoughts on this is that I reckon Wallin will have a lead after a couple of rounds. It's a case of 2 questions. If he's able to keep Dillian Whyte at bay, how long can he keep him at bay? Can Dillian Whyte adjust? If Dillian Whyte has fought southpaws in his career, like, I can't think off the top of my head a southpaw he's fought. And Otto Wallin, imagine he fought one in like his 3rd or 4th fight, or some journeyman southpaw. That's very different to fighting Otto Wallin, who is a very good fighter. So I think it's going to be very difficult. I think if I was Dillian Whyte, I would be saying, try your best to make Otto Wallin feel uncomfy in there. A bit like what Fury did. Try and get him on the back foot and invest in the body. Invest in Otto Wallin's body and just focus on your hooks. You know, try and get, like, Dillian Whyte has a great left hook. It's his best punch. His right hand's improving, but I don't know if it's improving enough to be able to really be a key factor in this fight. I don't know if you've... I don't think it's... I see his jab being a better punch than his right hand. And I don't think his jab will be effective against Wallin. I don't know if you feel that as well.
This is one of the problems he's going to have. I agree with you, by the way. His right hand is a little bit underdeveloped, in my humble opinion. And against the southpaw, if the southpaw takes away his jab and then he's reliant on that right hand, this could be a problem for Whyte, right? So I think he's going to have to stop boxing at some point and go to war. And listen, you know his mindset, right? He's got one of the best mindsets in the heavyweight division. If there's one dude who's not just going to let the fight, if it's not going his way, if there's one dude who's going to think, I'd rather get knocked out and lose on points, it's going to be Dillian Whyte. So he's going to go for it at some stage. The question is he going to be able to pin down Wallin enough to be able to do enough damage consistently? Now, we know with that left hook, if Wallin tries to exit and gets his angle wrong and is caught with a left hook, he's got one of the best left hooks in the heavyweight division, if not the best. It's right up there. So Wallin could get taken out with one shot, but he has proven to be very durable. So it's not something that you can just rely on. Oh, Dillian Whyte's going to walk through him. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this is a stern test. Also, Whyte has this tendency to overload on shots when he's looking to take someone's head off because he's a fighter.
He does.
Rather than
he always does.
And one thing I reckon you'll see at points is him looking a little bit silly, whereby he's having that massive rotation. And because Wallin's got that narrow stance, he will be in and out quickly. And there'll be moments where Whyte is going to get caught with a jab. And Whyte likes to catch and counter, right? So Wallin will go to work, land a shot. Whyte's going to try and throw this big hook. Wallin will probably step back, come back in and land something. And he's going to make Whyte look silly at points. But generally speaking, Whyte's timing tends to find the timing well. Although it can be way off early in a fight, he tends to then find it. So again, I can see a method in which as the fight wears on, he starts to find that a home for his shots. But if not, and Wallin's able to be inconsistent enough to keep him off, then it could be a long night for Whyte. It's an interesting fight. I'm really interested by it.
It's a great fight. And I think it's interesting what you said there as well. I get, for me and you, we look at this fight and we think this is a really good competitive fight. But does Dillian Whyte think that if AJ is saying you're fighting Otto Wallin real dismissively, maybe Dillian Whyte's looking and thinking, Yeah, I can beat this guy. Like Fury, he went life and death. I won't go life and death with him. It's quite straightforward. If he goes in and overestimates his ability against Otto Wallin, he's going to be in for a rude awakening. Because this is not like fighting a Chris Arreola or a Jermaine Franklin. Both one seen better days. One, although he's undefeated, in my opinion, Jermaine Franklin is not as good. He wouldn't beat Otto Wallin if I put them in the ring together. I appreciate that, Joe.
I've just figured out, by the way, that if I click comments, I can see the comments. Up to now, I haven't been able to see any comments. You can tell I'm every new screen card.
No, it's not just me who can see them. It's everyone can see them. I think you can see private chat or thing. I think if you're a guest, you always come up as private. But yeah, you can see all the comments coming in. I just don't have a chance to read them because I'm just trying to focus on what you're saying at the same time.
Sorry. I'm going off that I've got a tendency to just talk too much.
That's why we like your channel.
Well, if we're in the same room, we could have had some sort of sign. You could have had like I don't know, something to throw at me or something every time I go off on one. Just a little frisbee, just hit me upside the head, make me reset. But yeah, it should be a great fight. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And, you raised some great points about it too. And I hope that Whyte realizes, like you're saying, that it is a stern test. And he doesn't walk in thinking, I'm going to blow this dude away. Because that's how banana skin could come up. And listen, you've got to give Whyte credit, man, because it's easy for us to just assume he thinks that Wallin is not a stern test. He may very well be aware that this guy's a very good boxer. In which case, my word, man, Dillian Whyte, is there anyone this dude isn't targeting? He always seems to want the biggest and the best. And, he deserves to come through it, to be honest with you, and get a shot. He deserves it.
If ever someone's deserved a world title shot at this stage, if he even prior to fighting Otto Wallin, it's Dillian Whyte. I mean, all the fights he's had, the fights he's not need to have taken, like, he didn't need to take Joseph Parker. There's nothing on the line. And for him to just go ahead and do it, and he was only one fight removed from a world title fight at the time was Parker. It's crazy to think about. It's crazy to look at his resume and think, not only is this guy not a world, he's never even fought for a world title.
It's madness. And listen, I know he gets some stick for not accepting that shot at AJ. And listen, in retrospect, I do think it was a mistake. But at the same time, boxing is a business, right? They are prize fighters. They fight for a prize. If they don't feel as though their value is being respected as a commodity, as what they can bring to the table in terms of market value, then they're not going to take it. Now, I understand the counter argument to that is if you take an AJ and you believed in yourself and given a good account of yourself, your stock would have risen anyway, even if you'd lost. And if you'd won, your stock would have gone, to astronomical levels. So you should have taken the gamble, right? I understand that counter argument. But at the same time, every single time a fighter gets into the ring, especially against a guy like AJ, who can cause serious damage with his power, they're putting their lives and their health on the line. So you have to fight for your value on any given fight. And so I don't know what was offered. Okay, I don't know what the market value was for those guys, but clearly Whyte is a guy who's willing to fight the best in order to get a shot. So I don't hold it against him. I just have to accept that whatever offer was on the table from a business perspective, he wasn't happy with. So I do hope that Whyte does end up getting a shot that he deserves,
No, definitely. AJ is someone I want to talk about as well. Now, look, we're obviously a few weeks removed from the Usyk performance, fantastic performance, but it's looking likely we're going to get that rematch. And when he said he was going to rematch Ruiz, I thought to myself, he can win that because there's the blueprint how to beat Ruiz. But with this, first, I looked at that fight several times. I'm just thinking, how do you beat Usyk? And second of all, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, you need to change that team. Because even if you go into that Usyk fight, win or lose, there's still so many issues in that team that needs addressing. And it just seems like AJ, is it that he doesn't want to address them? Or is it that he just is too loyal to address the issues that are dead? We can all see it. Like, I just think that Rob McCracken should have been gone a long time ago, long before the Ruiz loss. I think that he needs a different trainer. I think he needs like a Shane McGuigan, or if he's to go to America, a Ronnie Shields or someone like that. What are your thoughts?
So when AJ was going to fight Ruiz the first time, I actually had a bet on Ruiz. And for the second fight, I had the bet on AJ. So that although I expected Ruiz to give him a real tough fight, and when he came in heavy, I thought Ruiz is going to do this. At mid-range, AJ shouldn't really be trading with Ruiz. in the second fight, I knew AJ would adapt, adjust, and get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that same sort of feeling in terms of, oh, if he makes this adjustment, he can win against Usyk, right? So I agree there. However, there are methods that he can take to increase his chances of beating Usyk. I believe, though, that method will also increase his chances of getting knocked out. So it will give him more chance of winning as opposed to losing. But if he is going to lose, there's more chance that it will be a devastating knockout. When you look at Anthony Joshua and the way he works, when he does really let go of his hands and he tries to take a guy out, he is an explosive athlete, right? He's a guy that he activates that sympathetic branch of the nervous system and he really goes for it. Then he gasses and he needs a couple of rounds to take off. We saw it happen against Klitschko. We saw it happen against Pulev even. You know, Pulev had a couple of rounds after the...
Remember that?
Right? Even against Andy Ruiz, but with Ruiz, who then continued to target the body, and maybe AJ had concussion, he never had the chance to get that second wind and recover. But whenever he really goes for it, there's a period where there's a lull. And so I believe he's going to have to increase his output, throw caution to the wind, and not just walk a guy down. It's easy to just say walk a guy down. He tried at times. You know, there was a moment, and I think it was the 9th or the 10th, where he tried to walk Usyk down, and Usyk slipped 2 shots, then caught him with a flush jab, a solid jab, an up jab to the chin. You can't just, you know, people think just walk over there and let your hands go. This isn't a playground fight. You're fighting against a guy who will slip outside of what you're trying to do, and you're walking onto a shot which will magnify the shot. You know, don't for 1 minute think that Usyk's feather-fisted just because he chooses not to always sit on his shots. You saw that he hurt AJ, and he's more than capable of hurting AJ again. But what he does need to do, in my opinion, is fight like a big man, get his hands on Usyk and try to lean on him and work the inside in terms of the body. Now, being a great inside fighter is beyond just physicality. It's not just about who's bigger. Usyk didn't start boxing until he was 15, which is not as late as AJ, who was 18, but it's late for a guy of that skill set.
No.
What people don't realize is that Usyk, apart from football and Ukrainian folk dancing, he was also a judoka. He was studying judo as a kid. So he's very proficient on the inside in the clinch. So this idea, I'm saying, yes, AJ needs to get hands on him, lean on him, try and wear him down, target the body up close. He had a good couple of rounds. I think it was the 5th and the 6th, where he was targeting the body. They were his best rounds. You have to try and do that and try and slow Usyk down. But it's easier said than done. In the 7th, I think it was, he tried to, or the 8th maybe, he grabbed Usyk. He tried to land the uppercut on 3 occasions in 1 round, AJ. And on one occasion, he grabbed him and pulled him in, and Usyk covered up and started moving backwards frenetically to get away from it. He spotted him. The other 2 times, AJ really did grab him well, and he couldn't escape. But what Usyk did, one arm was covering the one side of his head. The other one, the elbow came in slightly. So he was in this position here, which left him open to a hook to the body, right? But he cut off the trajectory for an uppercut. Had AJ thrown the uppercut, he would have landed directly on the elbow. So he's so proficient at knowing what to do, even when he's being ragdolled. Even when Chisora, who's got fast feet, was getting close to him and ragdolling him, he still didn't cause that much damage on the inside. So yes, there are things he has to do, AJ. But this idea that if, you know, you're getting a lot of pundits and fighters saying if AJ does this, I believe he knocks Usyk out. I still have Usyk as the favorite, even if AJ does it.
Firm favorite.
But there are things he can do which will increase his chances. But if he does, I think AJ will end up getting stopped, to be honest with you. But listen, I do believe the reason I've come in a roundabout way now to come to Robert McCracken. My point is, even if he does try to introduce these new things, I'm not so sure, regardless of who is with him, that he's going to be able to just make it happen, regardless of who the trainer is. That's not to say he shouldn't look to move trainers. But let's also remember that McCracken came to this camp late. He was away with the Olympics. And if I'm not mistaken, Angel Fernandez was the one that was doing the majority of the work with him. Yeah. And Angel is a guy that brings about upper body movement. So those little things of AJ being concerned about getting gassed, would that be rectified if McCracken isn't there? So I'm not saying he shouldn't leave McCracken, but I also, or bring someone else in as well. But I also don't buy into this idea that if he leaves McCracken, he dominates the heavyweight division. What he's
No.
already achieved is quite remarkable. To think that he started at 18 years old. If I told you, I'm going to bring you a heavyweight, start boxing, I think it started at 18, right? Something like that.
18, 19, yeah.
18, 19. He's going to go on to win a gold medal, then go on to become the unified heavyweight champion of the world. You're going to go to me, wow, man, his trainer's done an amazing job. Now, that doesn't mean you stay with that trainer forever, but it's also not true that McCracken somehow ruined AJ, which is what a few people have said to me. McCracken has ruined him. I don't see that. Yes, maybe it's time to take on a new trainer to go on to that next level. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean he would beat Alexander Usyk.
No, I agree. I think McCracken hasn't ruined AJ. I think he stagnated AJ is the best word. I think that AJ has more levels, but I don't think we're seeing them. I don't think McCracken is bringing them out. Having said that, I'll be frank, I genuinely believe if you had Manny Stewart in AJ's corner, he's probably still not beating Usyk. And it's really easy to say if he puts it on Usyk, he's a better chance of winning, but he's a higher chance of getting knocked out. When AJ does get hit and he gets hurt, I think that confidence leaves him. So I could see him maybe implement a strategy like that where he says, you know what, I'm just going to go for broke. And the minute he gets countered or walks into a left hand that hurts him, he could be a case of, here, I don't want to get knocked out again. I'll just take my chances and see if I can land something at range. I'll go back to boxing.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those scenarios whereby Abner Mares was talking about how when he was knocked out by Johnny Gonzalez, it took him years to overcome it. So not physically, he's talking mentally. Mm-hmm. There are demons there, and there will always be demons there. But personally, I'm not sure if it's more of an awareness. There's no point in being ignorant to your limitations, because then you are going to walk into something and get knocked out anyway. So perhaps he has realized, because of the Ruiz fight, maybe some things we don't see in sparring, I am actually a little bit more vulnerable when I get tired. You look at the Deontay Wilder-Fury affair the other day. Wilder took some massive shots and he was recovering quite quickly. The one that knocked him out, big shot on the temple, right? But if that had happened in round one, he might not have got knocked out, but he was exhausted. And when you're that tired, your punch resistance goes. So if Anthony Joshua is sitting there and he's thinking, look, if I'm going to have a chance, there's no point in me being dead on my feet, because just because I got away with it with Vladimir Klitschko doesn't mean I'm going to get away with it in every single fight. So I need to have enough in the reserve where I can still operate before I get a second wind. In other words, it could be a fear, yes, but based on reality. A phobia is based on an irrational fear. This might not be an irrational fear. He might genuinely have a reason to not want to gas, because we don't know how vulnerable he gets when he's gassed. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And with that, what do you do with that? Whatever trainer you are, if there's a physical limitation there, because he's so physically explosive, it's like a 100-meter sprinter, right? Usain Bolt will beat Mo Farah in a race over 100 meters, 200 meters, maybe even 400 meters. He's not beating him in a race over 10,000 meters. So he'll take a massive lead and then he's going to gas. His muscles are going to fill up with lactic acid, and then Mo Farah is going to start lapping him. And that's the point. At what point does that limit for AJ, that explosiveness, at what point does it mean that the fuel has been completely burned out? And he might be aware of that in the back of his mind. And regardless of who you bring in as a trainer, there will be things he can work on, he can improve on. He might learn to control the tempo a lot better. He might be able to learn how to clinch and lean on an opponent to sap their energy while he's recuperating. That'd be a great thing to learn. Barry Robinson did a terrific job with Lawrence Okoli, helping him with his inside game. Maybe he should look at something like that. But he's still going to have certain physical limitations that he's going to have to try. There's no such thing as a perfect fighter. That's my point. No, regardless of what you do, So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how he decides to go. I'm not against him getting a new trainer, but people shouldn't think that if he does, it solves everything. He's going to dominate the heavyweight division.
No, of course not. And I agree with you on that. Like, I would like to see him because I believe there's more there to Joshua. But having said that, I don't see if he got a new trainer, just name anyone, Virgil Hunter or someone like that, who could bring the next level out of him. I would still be reluctant to pick him over certain guys. So I wouldn't be like, all right, now he's moved, now he's a level above, now he's going to dominate. It's not going to happen. But I guess I'd like to see AJ make the most of his ability. And how do we not know? Maybe this is AJ at his peak. Maybe we're being a bit harsh on McCracken. Maybe AJ is in some ways overrated. I don't want to say like, you know what I mean, but maybe we've already seen AJ's peak. Maybe there's not much. Maybe if he got a new trainer, there wouldn't be much more else they can offer.
Look, Gman, I'll be honest. I think AJ's a terrific fighter. Like I said, I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect heavyweight. At the end of the day, he's lost one fight which he avenged against Ruiz, and then he lost another fight to a very special fighter, and he's going to have a chance to avenge that too. If he does avenge it, then he's no different in a sense to what Lennox Lewis has done. You know, he lost to Rackman, he avenged it. He lost to Oliver McCall. All right, the way he avenged that was unusual, obviously, but nonetheless, he avenged that. And nobody ever looks at Lewis and says, "Oh, you know, he was exposed by those two guys. He's not that good." These things happen in the sport. It's heavyweight boxing. Yeah. I do think he's a terrific fighter, but there's no such thing as the perfect fighter. Are there areas he can improve? Of course, but there are also areas Tyson Fury can improve. There are areas Muhammad Ali had no inside game. Muhammad Ali, as great as he was, he didn't like to chase a guy down. You know, he wouldn't want to cut off a ring and go after a man. You speak about these things in boxing, and it's almost like you're talking blasphemy. People are like, how can you question Muhammad Ali? There's no such thing as the perfect fighter. That's the reality. And I don't believe that any one guy beats everyone. You know, I think styles make fights, and although everybody says that, they don't actually believe it. Most people believe in levels. One guy's either better than the other. I don't believe that. I believe in styles making fights. And so, you know, AJ is never going to be the complete heavyweight because there's no such thing. He can improve, and you're right. It's possible that he's stagnated and he needs something else to get up more and then get to his peak. Maybe, you know, there's more potential there for sure. But I still think he's a terrific heavyweight. You know, I don't see him as a guy who's overrated and not that good. I think he's brilliant. He just happened to lose to another brilliant heavyweight. You know, that's my take on it. I might be wrong, but that's just my take on it.
And Alexander Usyk is unbeaten for a reason. Undisputed cruiserweight champion. He's a terrific fighter. But speaking of heavyweight, he really is. But speaking of it, there was a heavyweight fight on the weekend. Frank Sanchez, F.A. Ajagba. A lot of people are asking now about Frank Sanchez. I like Frank Sanchez, I do. He might not be the most entertaining fighter, but I definitely see a very good fighter there. What would you like to see from him next, moving forward? We can maybe end it with this. What do you think of Frank Sanchez?
Well, Frank Sanchez should be called Frank Melatonin Sanchez after that fight, because that guy could put you to sleep if you're suffering from insomnia, right? But all joking aside, very talented. And people often confuse excitement with quality. And there's a difference. You can be boring and be quality, and you can be exciting and have a whole bunch of limitations. Getting on the back foot, luring a guy in and jumping in, he does it so well. Very, very fast hands, accurate. And the thing is as well, if you look at F.A. Ajagba, he was a hunter, right? He stopped hunting. So what happened is he didn't want to throw any more punches because he felt the power and the sharpness of Sanchez. Sanchez was waiting for him to throw punches so he could throw off of that, and it created a stalemate, right? But listen, Cuban fighters are the way they are because they have taken on a certain school of boxing, and it's a very high level school, even if it isn't always the most attractive to observe, because it's based on an amateur system that's designed to bring glory to the nation through the Olympics. And that is all about hit and don't get hit. So you're not going to see Frank Sanchez in a war. But if you look at someone like Tyson Fury, some of the guys he struggled with in the past, whether it's Cunningham, whether it's stories of sparring stories against lighter guys, cruiserweights, Jared Anderson and a whole bunch of other cruiserweights, Michael Hunter as well, have, according to rumors, given him serious problems because they're able to stay on the outside and fight that raiding style of jumping in and landing a shot and getting out. And Fury wants to be the more agile and faster heavyweight. He can adapt and fight like the big man if he has to, but when he's fighting against the bigger man, he will often tend to be the more elusive guy. Sanchez could cause Fury a whole host of problems. I'm not saying he beats him, but Fury would have to seriously think, right, how do I pin this guy down? Because he's got faster hands. He's got faster hands than me, and the way he rotates around the ring, I can't cut him off. I mean, you know, he's leading with big power shots. He could cause Fury some problems. So Sanchez is going to be a threat to anyone in the heavyweight division. I'm not sure he's the best guy. I don't think he'll go on to become, you know, a unified or undisputed heavyweight champ. But on any given day, he's got the skill set to be able to cause guys serious problems.
He definitely does. He definitely, if he was legit 29, which I don't think he is, I'd be saying in a few years' time, we've got we've got a good guy on our hands. The only thing I'm worried about is how old is he actually, and how many years do we have with him being able to move like that and throw shots like that.
Nah, he's so old. He owes Napoleon a tenner. That guy is old. I don't believe him. No, no way he's 29.
If he is 29, he's had a hard 29. He's only about a year and a bit older than me. I'm like, mate, no way you're a year and a bit older than me. Hell no. You've had a hard time.
He looks like he's old enough to be. He looks like he's old enough to be your dad. Don't worry about that. He's not 29. I don't believe that. But listen, athletically, he moves like a 29-year-old. He's got the hand speed. So, maybe he's just got, from an aesthetic perspective, those genes that aren't particularly great for looking youthful. He may very well be. Who knows? We don't want to leave ourselves open to any legal action here, Gman. Yeah. But whatever the case might be, he's a very talented fighter, that's for sure.
I don't know. Like I watched that fight back, and I love seeing wars. I do. I love seeing big punchers. I have to admire when I see a big guy with the skill set of Frank Sanchez, though. Although that fight wasn't entertaining, when you look at the movement, the internet movement, the footwork, the speed, you can't help but admire that. Even though it's not entertaining, when you're watching it, you're just like, it's impressive. The skill set.
I agree, but for me, if you're talking about the very, very best, this isn't just about boxing, but in all art forms, all right, even acting, say, the versatile ones tend to be the ones that are their best, unless they have some sort of unbelievable weapon. If Deontay Wilder's punching power, as Paulie Malignaggi says, is one-trick pony, but it's one hell of a trick, right? Whereas with somebody like, unless you've got something exceptional like that, for me, it's the versatility that tends to take someone to the top. If you're an actor, yeah, it's one thing if you can always play a villain, a good villain, that's great. But if you really want to be a leading man that can play a villain or a rom-com or whatever, you've got to be versatile enough to do a bit of everything. And Sanchez, he can hurt guys for sure, but is he elite at walking a guy down? In other words, once it became apparent that Efe Ajagba became gun-shy, why wasn't Sanchez able to adapt and become a front foot fighter and take him out? Now, it could just be because he was risk averse and he's thinking, I've got it in the bag like this. Why would I even give him 1% chance, right? That might be the reason. If that's the case, though, he's going to make himself very, very difficult. It's going to make him very, very difficult to sell himself, particularly to an American audience.
Yes.
And when the Klitschko's were sorry, mate.
They were booing at stages in that fight.
Right. And the Klitschko's, well, Vladimir, because Vitaly was exciting, but Vladimir, when he was, when Vladimir was dominant and yet risk averse, he struggled to get on the network in the US, and he was the king of the heavyweight division. So if a guy is not even a king and he's just looking to be a challenger, how are you going to get that shot unless you're mandatory? And even then, we know how these networks or operate, how the governing bodies operate. The point is, how's he ever going to work himself into a position where he gets a shot if he's going to be that boring? That's something you're going to have to think about. Maybe because he's got Canelo in his, in his corner, he's going to be able to pull a few strings. I don't know. But yeah, I'd like to see him become a little bit more adventurous at least.
That does help, having Canelo. Being part of it, the team Canelo will help anyone. Because I think with Canelo, even if you're up, you can piggyback off that. I think that's what everyone kind of does, being part of Eddie Reynoso and Team Canelo.
But they've also got Ruiz. So it could be that they prefer to push Ruiz, who is very fan-friendly in the way he fights, right? He's a fun fighter to watch. So, but yeah.
It's an interesting one. I think that after the early to like the 2010s, the early 2010s, after what we had in heavyweight division, where like some of the best guys were Ruslan Shagayev, like to name a few, Sultan Ibragimov were the best guys. To have the guys we have now and consistently being able to churn out, when these guys finish, we're lucky that we have Hrgovic, we do have Sanchez, Ajagba, Dubois to take over, and I still think that they're all good fighters. I think the heavyweight division is in good hands for the foreseeable future.
There's quality fighters out there, Yokar, Makhmudov. We could be here all day. We could be here all day, seriously. Like Jared Anderson and Dubois as future of the division. There are a lot of good fighters in this. It's a stacked division, man. Along with maybe lightweight, and even more so, I think heavyweight division, maybe fly as well. But I think the heavyweight division is the most stacked division in the sport. If you're I'm telling you, I could list you 15 quality fighters in the heavyweight division. And if you start to think about the different fights that can be made. Hunter's another one we haven't mentioned. Gassiev's now come up to the heavyweight division. Briedis seems to want to stay at cruiserweight, but he's flirting with the idea of heavyweight.
Yeah, he's toying with it.
He's toying with it. And when he fought Manuel Char, who is sort of a gatekeeper, right? Maybe upper European level, you'd say, if that these days, maybe European level. Regardless, he smashed him to pieces when they fought at heavyweight. Briedis destroyed him. It was
that was a better knockout than the Beckham knockout.
Right. So when you look at the talent in this heavyweight division, it is stacked. You could make so many quality fights. I just hope we get to see them, because if what we're hearing is true, Hrgović couldn't get a fight in the top 15 for the IBF eliminator because it became a risk versus reward factor. And so
that's the problem.
But you know what? We as fans are to blame for that, G-Man, because the O has become such a big thing. If you lose your O, it's become such a big thing now that, fighters are afraid to take a risk.
I know.
You're saying that
that's terrible.
It is, but look, you're Michael Hunter, right? Apparently, not apparently, he did turn down the Hrgović fight and he went down another route. That doesn't necessarily mean he thinks that he would lose. But what he might be thinking is, look, even if I've got 60% chance, I'm the favorite. That's how he sees it, for argument's sake. Why would I risk a 40% chance of losing and then never getting another title shot when I believe I can take the top guys out? So let me go down the route of Mike Wilson and then take out one of the higher ranked fighters in that category, in that governing body. Let me go after Manuel Char, and then I'll get in through the back door like that. From a business perspective, that's the right decision. We as boxing fans don't like it. We don't like it. But that's the reality. If I was his business manager, I'm telling him the same thing. So we are creating this problem because when a guy loses, it's almost like a cancel culture within boxing. He took an L. So what? Do you see what I'm saying?
That's what I say about like FA Jag, but it's like he lost, so what? Everyone, majority, like 99.9% of fighters will lose, apart from the really exceptional. They're probably going to lose. It doesn't mean that they're a bad fighter.
And even the really exceptional, oftentimes it's about the timing of their fight. They fought a guy who wasn't, we won't talk about Floyd because he'll trigger a lot of people. But let's talk about someone like Rocky Marciano, right? Rocky Marciano, one of the all-time greats, fantastic fighter, so underrated. People just think he was a brawler. He wasn't. I promise you. One day I'm going to do a technical breakdown on the things he used to do in the ring. Brilliant. But he fought brilliant fighters, right? Brilliant fighters, and he won. But some of them, like Joe Louis, weren't at their peak. Now, he may very well have beaten Joe Louis in his prime. He may have. But he didn't. Joe Louis was past his best. The point is, sometimes you can go a whole career undefeated and things just align for you. You know when to fight someone, either they're past their best or they're a little bit too green, or there's a guy whose style is made for you and you're going to avoid another guy who stylistically were wrong for you. The fact of the matter is, if they all fight each other, it's virtually impossible, if they're all fighting each other in their peaks, for someone to go undefeated over a long career. So stop holding it against guys. You can have a bad night. You might not have had a good night's sleep the night before and you're a bit lethargic. Do you know what I mean? It's like, as boxing fans, we need to be demanding that these heavyweights fight each other and not hold it against them when they lose, because there are some quality fights to be made.
There absolutely are. And as you say, like, we look at someone like Marciano, he fought great fighters, very lucky in his time that, Ezra Charles had seen better days. I reckon Ezra Charles would have beaten him, but that was his prime Ezra Charles. He was fantastic fighter.
It's a great fight, that one.
Yeah, I know. They had two good fights, but I reckon if you were talking about peak Ezra Charles, he would have won. He would have beaten him. I think that would have been the one. That would have been the one.
You reckon?
Ezra Charles was fantastic. He was fantastic. I think 26 losses he had, and people kind of overlooked that, was like, no, he was a brilliant fighter in his peak.
See, but that's the point. Look at I know the old timers used to fight a lot more frequently, and so you've got less time for your body to recover. There's more chance of you having a night, an off night. So you expect higher levels of defeats. But at the end of the day, when the best fight the best, this is going to happen. It happens in other sports. In football, if the team that's top of the league loses to the team that's 15th in the league, it's a one-off defeat over the course of the season. Yeah. You look at the end of the season, you say, yeah, they're still champions. They lost 3 times. You're not going to look at those 3 losses and say, oh, they're not that good, right?
Yeah.
We've got to stop that in boxing, because it's what essentially stops fights from happening. But at the same time, the Floyd Mayweather sort of mentality of not taking an L has prevailed among most casual fans. And this is the problem. This is the problem now. You know, it's not just going to go away just because we're sitting here saying we've got to stop doing it. It's there. It's a reality. And unfortunately, we're not going to be seeing a lot of these top fights as a result.
He said that. I remember when George Groves, he said in an interview, I think it was long after the first Carl Froch fight, when they stopped that fight prematurely, they said to George Groves, what went through your mind when that happened? And it wasn't that I've lost the chance for a world title. It wasn't that it's a premature stoppage. They said the first thing that came to my mind was, oh no, I've lost my O. That's crazy. Like the first thing that comes to mind is my O is gone, as if that is the holy grail.
You know what though? I don't mind that from a boxer if he's willing to risk it, because I think before you're defeated, there is that extra, even if this whole thing didn't exist about, you know, you can't lose, otherwise you'll be punished. The reality is a defeat should always hurt a fighter. And when you've never tasted defeat before, you should be obsessed with not losing. So I don't hold that against him, but you should be obsessed with not losing in terms of the way you train. Mike Tyson used to cry sometimes pre-fight. And when he was asked why in an interview, he said, it was fear. I was afraid of losing. I wasn't afraid of the opponent. I wasn't afraid he's going to hurt me. I was afraid of losing. That shouldn't leave a fighter. Once he stops caring, oh, it's not a big deal if I lose, he's done. Forget it. You might as well retire. Yeah. There's no, in terms of trying to achieve what he wants, he's just there for the money after that, right? But if you're talking about that thing, that obsession with not losing, I get that, but not at the expense of taking a risk. Do you see what I'm saying? You don't want to lose, but you should still shoot for the stars. Go for your dreams. And then if you lose along the way, these things happen. But don't become so obsessed with not losing that you avoid taking a risk. It's kind of like a woman, right? If you're going to approach a woman in a bar and you are afraid of rejection, so as a result of being afraid of rejection, you decide I'm not going to approach a woman, you're going to stay single for the rest of your life. Make the move. She might tell you you're ugly. Fair enough. There's what, 4 billion women in the world. One of them's gonna find you attractive, no matter how ugly you are. So you know that's
look at Boris Johnson.
Exactly. Listen, if Boris can get laid, anyone can. Take your chances, right?
Oh, no, I agree with you fully there. And you know, I think that I think though, slowly but surely we're getting to the end of the O is the most important thing. You do see certain fighters, like, I'm trying to think, like, look at Lee McGregor. He said it himself. He just wants good fights. He wants to keep winning, get titles. He doesn't care about the O. If he said, if I lose, I lose. I'll keep fighting. I think we are kind of, with some newer fighters, up and comers, we're starting to get past that. And Lee McGregor is an excellent fighter. I think he's brilliant because he just seems to want to fight anyone, that guy. Him and Cash for a rematch would be brilliant.
And listen, they got a good team behind them as well. You know,
a very good team.
Very good team. You know, Ben Davison's a very good trainer. Whyte's a fantastic performance analyst. So one of the reasons they might not be afraid, the point I'm getting at, they might not be afraid to take those risks. Lee McGregor I'm talking about here is because there's that feeling of I'm well equipped. I understand. I have a belief in my team behind me. And so I'm just sort of segueing back to AJ, I guess, and McCracken. You have to be in a position where you're believing in your team. And I think it was Joe Stunner Boxing, right, who in a recent video was talking about he would end up giving up part of his psychology, I guess. If loyalty is a big part of who AJ is, if he avoids taking that route with McCracken as a result of that, he's going to end up sacrificing part of who he is, his soul, his mentality. And if he feels that thing behind his, in the back of his mind of, I didn't do right by him, right? It could genuinely sort of affect his output, because mentally, how do you train if you feel so guilty about what you've done?
Yeah.
And that was an interesting point.
That's an actually interesting point, actually.
Yeah. So
that's something I didn't think of that, actually.
Yeah, so in other words, you have to believe in what you invest in emotionally. Yeah, so
that's cool. Man, this has been so much fun. I know you are quite a busy man, and we only had so long to do it. And believe you me, man, this hour and a bit is just. I only said that we. I remember if I said backstage, we'll do about half hour, 40 minutes. Gone over an hour now. So people, what we're going to do is I'm going to call it here. Right, me and you are going to call it here. We're going to chat for a bit backstage. But before I go, Chris Andre boxing channel link is in the description. I'm going to let you have the final word before we call it.
I don't know what to say. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Plug the channel. I'll put you on the spot there.
Okay, so Chris,
like, shit.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell I don't do many lives. So Chris Andre Boxing is where you can find me on YouTube. I am on Twitter at BetBoxing, one word. For boxing related tweets and a whole bunch of other stuff too. But for boxing videos, if you do want to subscribe, if you do want to hit that notification button, if you enjoy the videos, then I'd be more than happy to hear everybody's views and stuff like that. Thanks for having me, Gman. I genuinely appreciate it. You know that you're my boy, Gman. Even away from boxing, we talk quite often on Twitter. And
yes, we do, man.
This guy is a great guy. It's not just about his boxing knowledge. He's a wonderful dude. So I'm very happy to be on. Thank you.
Well, lads, I'm going to call it here. Appreciate everyone in the chat. Jamie, Karma, all them. I know.
Okay, you're back.
No, we're good. We're good.
Thank you, man.
I'm ending it now, so don't worry. It's going to be good to go. But lads, lassies, I'll talk to you. You'll get a video from me tomorrow as well. And I'm sure you'll get one from Chris as well. Peace.